Are we ready? Okay, so let me introduce myself first. My name is Raj Moabir. I work at the General Secretariat of the Indian Ocean Commission. I have the title of the officer in charge at the Secretariat. I'm an economist by profession, but I have been working at the IOC since the last 18 years. And I have experience in several areas related to regional cooperation and integration, amongst others, fisheries, ocean economy, trade, regional integration, ICT cooperation between the countries, etc. But I'll be happy to provide my brief introduction. I hope it will be in the report. We have a session that was supposed to start at 2, but we are nearly at 3. So we will eat up some of your tea time that is planned afterwards. We'll try to catch up for the time lost. And hence, we'll try to go a bit faster, if possible. We have this session, which is titled Collaboration Amongst Oceanic Countries on Blue Economy. And you've seen already in the program of this session that we have 4 key questions that we are expected to address in this session. We'll try to do it in an hour time. We have 5 presenters, and we will see how we can try to get all the presentations done, but at the same time also ensure that there are some exchanges on those key questions that have been tabled to you all. My analysis of the questions is that the first one is much more related to one aspect of blue economy, which is the economy, and which is related to how we can promote the optimum utilization of the resources in the sea. And we will have a presentation by the Director General, Mr. Badal from the Ministry of Defense, and Rodriguez of Mauritius, who will showcase by providing one example how this can be done. So that will be a showcasing session and presentation. So that will be the first question that we'll try to attempt. And as I said, this is much more related to economy. Now the related questions on that, and which is relevant to the work of the organization, is how when the management of the vast oceans that we have, as it has been very well put in the report, the world is 72% covered by the ocean. So how best can we make the optimum use of these resources, knowing very well that the strategy for most of our countries up to now has been to address and to look at how we can best manage the terrestrial area, not necessarily the ocean area that we have. And this is changing now since a few years. We're trying to look at how the new horizon for economic development and opportunities by looking at the vast resources that we have in the oceans, which we have for the whole history, we have not been taking good care of, if I can say so. But we'll come to those points ultimately. So the first part is much more related to the economic aspect. So we'll see how far Mr. Badal can explain to us with some example on how to address and improve and make ocean economy, blue economy, as a new pillar for economic development. The second question is much more the issue of the need or not for regional cooperation and for countries to work together. The Indian Ocean island states and the Western and Southern African states, coastal states, are share in common, this vast ocean. And in fact, we've done some calculations and we think that including the EEZs, we're talking about something like 14 million square kilometers of the ocean. And hence, there is definitely some need for countries to work together. There are many, many things that individually the countries cannot address them. So this is the second aspect, and where maybe I can intervene also, providing some examples of what we are doing in this area, where you can't go away without working together as a group of countries on certain challenges or certain areas, for example, on piracy, on maritime security, etc. So here we will have two presenters, Mr. Shakil Gobardhan from the MPA Mauritius and Mr. David Bianchi from Seychelles. I'll give you some brief on them later, as I'll call upon them to make their presentations. And the third point is much more about the sustainability of the ocean. As you all know, we have been seeing in many reports, even in the news regularly, about the challenges for us. Of course, the most important one, which is on the agenda since decades, is the issue of sustainable fisheries. The FAO has been telling us that in less than half a century, we will end up having no fish in the sea. And now we are seeing other challenges like what is happening to the sea with respect to marine pollution, and most importantly, on plastic pollution. And there are many questions that are being raised. And in this question, maybe we can hear from the current acting Secretary General of PEMASA, the Port and Maritime Authority for the Eastern and Southern Africa, Mr. Colonel André Ciseaux, and maybe I'll add up a few points on that one. And then the last point, which is much more, I would say, it is linked to the need for lessons and experiences from each of our countries on what are the things that we should learn from each other. And this is where events like this one is very important, to learn from each other experiences and lessons that are important for us to understand. And on this one, I also will make some points, and I'll take an example that I always give, just very briefly to say, for example, in the area of fisheries, which, as you know, is the most ancient job that we do. Well, some say not most ancient. The most ancient is something else, but the second most ancient, I would say, activity. But even then, we did some study some 10 years back here for this region, the Western Indian Ocean region, and what we found out that the fisheries that are being caught in this region, the benefits from those fisheries accrue to less than 7% to the countries in this region. So my question is that how come that fisheries, an activity which is the second most ancient activity in the whole world, where we islands and coastal states, we have not developed sufficient competence and technology to benefit and to fish and to make the best of it, countries outside this region are benefiting more. And to demonstrate that, if you look at, for example, the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, there are 31 members of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission. Why they are members? Because they have interests. But then, which countries are expected to ensure that the fisheries are done in a proper way? To do the surveillance of the fisheries, only the coastal states in this region. So there is something fishy here. The point is that if we are not able to exploit and derive the maximum benefits from fisheries, on which we've all the time relied on, and which we claim to have all the competence, we are not able to maximize from the benefit from that. How come we can do it on other resources for which we do not have the technology, the know-how, and the resources for exploiting them. And that is the key thing. So these are the kind of 4 key questions on which we will try to deal. Not necessarily that each of the interveners in the panelists will be addressing each of them. They will, of course, try to focus on one, but then touch on the others, one after the other. Now, this is what I can say in terms of the introduction, and I would call upon the first panelist, and Mr. Reza Badal. Mr. Reza Badal, he is from the, as I said, the Ministry for Defense and Road Rigs. I have his a brief profile here, and the brief profile is only 1 page full. So if I read all his CV, the brief CV, it will eat up all the time that I've planned for him to intervene. So I'll just say that Mr. Reza Badal is the Director General of the Department for Continental Shelf, Maritime Zones for Administration and Exploration of the Ministry of Defense and Road Rigs. Mr. Reza Badal, please. And by the way, he's Dr. Reza Badal. So Reza, if you're ready.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this very brief introduction. I believe you already hit the floor, so well, the good thing is we are all from the same family. We are all from the African continent, and we bear the same origin. So I believe as brothers, let's face it, right? And I would like to welcome you. So my time start now. Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, you've introduced the subject, and you've given me the privilege to showcase. In fact, the title of our panel today is to look at collaborative effort or collaborative ventures between coastal states in the region, or even among the continental countries. So how do I have, what's the job for me now to showcase this kind of collaboration? So in my mind, let's start small. We will try to do that by using the example of 2 small island states, Mauritius and Seychelles. So my brother from Seychelles, in fact, we should be doing that together. So allow me this time, because we can't speak with 2 voices at the same time, but we'll speak with 1 voice for both of us. So for my task today, I have the privilege to give you kind of an example how the success story between what we call now, so commonly known now as a joint management area between Mauritius and Seychelles, and how we have reached the stage where we are right now, and how this collaboration has matured up. So to start with the famous UN Class article, I would say around about end of the year 1990s, UN come up with one of its articles that urged upon states to come up with their delimitation of their boundaries, namely speaking of the margin that extend beyond the 200 nautical miles. And in that task, those who have been rushing to ratify, I would say, the law of the sea, they had a deadline. So they had to do it within a certain time period. And how to do that was one of the biggest challenges, I would say, we, small island state, had to do at that time with the limited resources as we have been yelling for those past days. So let me give you an example how this work kind of started. So just to give you some background, you're all aware of the EZ and the different maritime zones that exist within the UN Class Prelude and how they are defined. So I won't go through all of them, but we start, for example, with the EZ, the Economic Exclusive Zone. But beyond that, there is a certain distance, I would say, certain limit where island state can actually go and have jurisdiction. And that is called the extended continental shelf. But how you go about that and how you set the boundary, and that's what we are going to talk about today. So there is a provision in the legal structure for UN that allows you to go beyond that delimitation, beyond the EEZ, and there you have to come up with solid, if I may say, real proof in terms of scientific evidence. One of my colleagues in the morning talks about data, about information. So one of the biggest challenge we had at that, right at the beginning, was to provide the evidence, the data, the information that will give the evidence that those two coastal states, Mauritius and Seychelles, we do have this kind of right to extend our boundary beyond the 200 nautical miles. So where were we at that time? We have our own scientific evidence. And what should we be looking at in terms of, I would say, providing the right information to actually show that we have what we call in the jargon of UN, a natural prolongation from our own land masses. So that was the challenge. And of course, once you've got this kind of natural prolongation, but how far can you go? Is there really a real extension to your normal maritime boundary? Or does that just stand where we are, where we were at that time with the economic exclusive zone? So the two coastal states went on and studied, I would say, separately right in the beginning. So Mauritius was doing his own homework in his tiny corner. Seychelles was doing the same thing in his corner. And if that were to continue, we would end up with our own EEZ, like I'm showing on the map. So how did we work that out? So that's going to be my task today, to tell you how this actually materialized. So if you look beyond the blue sea and you go deeper into the ocean, you will find out that there is what we call the Mascarene Plateau, starting right from Mauritius, ending up to the Seychelles. So this massive structure, this massive plateau, is actually have an origin with the continent, with our brother from Africa. So that's where we have this structure. So without this kind of information, without this kind of evidence, I don't think even Mauritius and Seychelles would have been gone any further with that. So we had to actually look for that, study this, and at the end of the day, we find out that, look, if Mauritius or even Seychelles were to put a case to the UN and go with their case separately, would we have a case? Looking at that kind of image. Someone look at that. Can you tell me where Mauritius is and where Seychelles is? We are both sitting on the same mountain. It's the same structure. So who's going to depart us? That's the scientific evidence. And no one can deny that. So from that basis, if we were to go to UN and tell them, look, Mauritius have a case and Seychelles have a separate case, so UN will just tell you, who am I to decide? I don't have this jurisdiction to separate this kind of boundary. You go out there and you sort out your own delimitation issues, and then you come back. So there would be no case. So on this basis, on this scientific evidence, we sat down together. Of course, this is where you have to bring the element of diplomacy, the element of trust, the element of right information, and right information at the right time to discuss with your counterpart, to show that, look, we have the same evidence, we have the same scientific basis, so it makes no point for each of us to go separately. So that's the argument that we have been using, and rightfully, even from Seychelles sides, we agreed together and we sat down on one table and we went to to the UN. And that's how things cascaded. So in 2008, Mauritius and Seychelles put up what we call a joint submission. So we worked together. At the end of the day, when you were looking at the table and who is typing on the computer and who's doing the programming and who is doing the modeling and who is trying to do the survey, you won't make any distinction. Who is Seychellois, who is Mauritian? So that was the way, the atmosphere where we've been working since, I would say, 2006, beyond that. Because 2008, we put up the submission. So thing has cascaded down, and finally the submission was examined by the UN. We went there as a team, one unique team. Even the commissioner, I would say, there they even couldn't make a difference from where you come or from which country you are from. So that's how we put up the submission, and finally, in 2011, we got the recommendation. So that's one thing down the road. So from there, we got it. So that's the joint management area in green. We won't discuss into the massive zone of those two huge EEZ, but from there on, that's even better in terms of collaboration. We've got the boundary, we've got the new jurisdiction, but how do we manage the whole plateau, the whole GME, as we call it? So that was the biggest challenge we had ever. In fact, it was the first of its kind in this region. How do we model and bring up this kind of a collaboration? So we started drafting the new, what we call new legal and institutional framework. So we went up and drew up the two treaties that established and paved the way, I would say, into the management of the joint management area. So we got those treaties on hand, and from this treaty, I can very proudly say that we've been up to now using this as our own Bible and established how we should proceed in terms of managing the area. Of course, we have to put up a system. And what kind of system we've been using up to now, we've been managing the area for the past 5 years. We had a structure, a three-tiered system, as we call it, starting with a ministerial council, a joint commission, and then a designated authority. And each of them is being like co-chaired. We don't have one chair, it's co-chaired every time. So there is a system where we have equal sharing in all the collaboration aspect. 50-50 everywhere, nothing. We put the expenses as we draw out the revenue. So that's the main driving principle in this venture, I would say. So the three-tiered system allows us to develop even further in terms of how we're going to manage the area. So we have now a full framework in terms of a full legislative codes. What law are you going to use in the region? It's a joint management area. Can you use Mauritius? Will you use Seychelles law? Which one is going to be applicable? So we have to reinvent the new legislative code. So we work out a number of legislation that would be used specifically for Seychelles. And that's, I would say, 6 of them that I've quoted there, starting from environmental code of practice, model agreement, joint fiscal and taxation code, and so on and so on. So we've already put up a strategic plan, and we are working, I would say, in terms of how we are going to manage the area. There is 5 basic aims in this strategic plan, starting with the very first one, I would say, how you build up the information system. For us, since this is a remote area, and how you manage that, we very much rely into the information system, and that will boil down at the end of the day, I would say, with a full spatial planning of the area and how you're going to attribute the uses of the various spaces you have in the region. So luckily, up to now, we have been working on a number of, let's say, even a declaration, environmental declaration, how we are going to move forward with that. So that's already in the process. But recently, we've got, I would say, and this is how, in terms of collaboration, again, when you're 2 countries, it facilitates in a certain way joint ventures or even funders to come and give you support. So UNDP has kindly, and GEF has kindly agreed to fund one of the database project for the GMA. So we've started up with mapping the whole area. And in fact, I can announce my colleague here, we already have someone from Seychelles in my office who's rightly managing the project right now. So that's one of the projects that we are working on, the demonstration project for the GMA. And things are moving. Oops, one more. So to know more about this area, we have been able, again, since we have established the GMA, we've got a full scientific multidisciplinary cruise that conducted in May and June, a full oceanographic research in the area. So we've come up with a number of interesting results right now. So we've been able to map the seabed, what are the various components, and this is going to progress further. So you can see from this map here, the famous Sayadamala Bank, for example, and what are the various constituents in terms of the resources that we have here on the seabed. So all this information is going to feed into our full database that will help us to manage and make the marine spatial planning correctly. Recently, we've just launched what we call the multi-client geotechnical survey. So we have, in fact, awarded a contract to one exploration companies which will give us a potential in terms of what are the prospectivity of the area in terms of oil and gas. So that's, I would say, one of the major two activities that we started after the establishment of the GMA. So with that, I think I'm on time. And so, in fact, just to give you a new decision just 2 weeks ago, we've opened the area now. So it's companies who are willing to come and invest in the area. So that's already kind of declared even at the level of cabinet. With that, allow me to thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badal. Let's now sort of summarize the presentation. The presentation shows us that the development of blue economy, ocean economy is a long process. It's a very complex process. And we do understand that the objective with respect to the extended continental shelf jointly owned by Seychelles and Mauritius is something on which lots of work has been done. But then the theme of our discussions on this particular point is to go further. So what we can conclude here is that development of ocean economy or blue economy is a long process. And we have to start somewhere to get things done in the right manner to establish the framework. Now, what we have heard from Dr. Badal is that the framework was established, the treaties, etc., has been done, negotiations have been done, even research have been already initiated. Now, the next step will be to get to the economic activities, which is now getting investments in that area, which will ultimately then reach to the level where we can find economic activities undertaken, hence the benefit in terms of the employment creation opportunities, opportunities for other activities, which will then increase substantially the blue economy, ocean economy activities from the part of Mauritius and Seychelles. So this is what we can conclude on the presentation of Dr. Badal, is that we have to go stepwise and we have to do it very well. If not, we might end up, and we don't want to take some examples where you just leave it for the private sector to come, do exploration, and then we can see that the benefits from the exploration of those resources are not trickling down to the countries and to those who are really needed in terms of opportunity for that particular country. So this is what we can summarize. Because we don't have much time, I would suggest that we'll go for other presentations, one after the other, and then we'll take up questions and exchanges. We can do it afterwards. So my next presentation, the next presentation will be done by Mr. Goberdon. Mr. Goberdon, he has been working in the area of port development since 1987, so it means that he has 32 years of experience of port development, and he is now the officer who is in charge. His exact title is Acting Director, Mauritius Port Authority, and he's in charge for ports planning, implementation of capital development projects in Mauritius. So he will be providing us some idea of how, with respect to the maritime sector, with respect to port development, we can collaborate in this area with other countries in this region. Shakil?
The title of my presentation, first of all, sorry, good afternoon, and the title of my presentation is on maritime transport and the collaboration among the coastal countries. In fact, the Mauritius Port Authority, we have signed so many agreement memorandum with port authorities in other countries, but not all of them are successful, right? But for the purpose of this conference, I'll take two examples. One of them is the organization which is called the PAMSA, which itself is regrouped about 19 countries. The association offers an appropriate framework for exchange of information and ideas among members and to create enabling environment whereby any member can interface with one another in the port, transport, and trade arena. The second one is the API-OE, which is the Association of the Port in the Indian Ocean. This organization regroups mainly the island countries, and the main objective is to exchange experience and knowledge, including cooperation in the field of cruise tourism, fishing, environment protection, training among the Indian Ocean region. For the purpose of this conference, I'll take two examples, which is helpful in terms of sharing of information. One is the cruise tourism, where we have API-OE, which we use as a platform to share information and also to carry out surveys. For example, for this region, the organization is undertaking a market survey to see what is the potential of cruise in the region and how to standardize our service, how to enhance the quality of service to passengers so that we are at the same level. And I should point out that at Port Louis Harbor, we started the cruise tourism in 2007 when the traffic was about 6,000 pax. And in 2010, we constructed a dedicated cruise jetty. Since then, we started having an increase in traffic from 23,000. And last year, we were having 40,000 passengers. And this has encouraged us to go for the construction of a dedicated cruise terminal. On the map, you can see the area that has been identified for the cruise terminal. We have the cruise jetty, and we will be using the bulk sugar terminal and the jetty to accommodate 2 vessels at any one time. This is the iconic plan of our cruise terminal, which we intend to construct. And the design has been completed. We intend to start construction next year, and it will be ready by mid of 2020. One thing which is important in cruise is that a single port cannot, on its own, market the cruise tourism. It should be the region, because we don't have port destination, but it is regional destination. All the ports where the vessel will be calling will benefit from these cruise activities. So it is important for all the ports together, all the countries together, jointly to do an effort to be on the same wavelength to promote the cruise activity and also benefit from that activity. And here we have got the support of PEOE, where they not only market the cruise tourism and also market Pointe as the home port for cruise activities. And we should also point out that not all port can become the home port. Otherwise, we'll have overcapacity. At times, given there is inadequate, maybe flight from foreign countries, from Europe, then we can share. We have a sharing between Réunion and Mauritius, where some passengers, instead of catching the ship port at Pointe, travel to Réunion and catch the ship over there. This is one example where we can use all the ports together to come to a common project which will be beneficial to all of us. Another area where we are also focusing is the container transshipment. The terminal that you can see had initially until 2015 had a capacity of 550,000 TEUs. 2017, we have expanded the facility to 1 million TEUs. Deepen the berth, increase the size, we can now go and accommodate vessel of 12,000 TEUs. But what happened is that our requirement for the economy is only 250,000 TEUs. So we have got capacity, 3 times more capacity to cater for additional traffic. And this additional traffic is not for our local economy, but for the regional port. This is the transshipment traffic. And on this note, I would like to point out that we need sharing of information. We need to together understand how the development is taking place in different countries so that we don't provide for overcapacity or undercapacity. The facilities infrastructure are expensive investment, and we need to provide them at the right time to cater for the expected traffic and demand. Otherwise, the objective that we are aiming will not be met, because our objective is to increase connectivity and mainly to reduce freight rate. If we have overcapacity, the cost will be higher, and it will not be at the benefit of all of us. So this is another area of cooperation. In addition to what we have, we are already thinking about the future, because according to the growth in the African countries, the traffic at Pointe Harbour will not stagnate at 1 million, but will increase to 2 million. And we don't have enough capacity for that. So we are already thinking of another project, which is the island terminal project. But again, we can't go blindly on such project. We need to gather information from our friendly countries, what is happening, how the market is moving. And on this project, we have appointed Royal Haskoning, to carry out the techno-economic study. In the light of their study, we'll proceed with the implementation of a project, but not from our own investment, but through a PPP project, because we want shipping line, because they own the cargo, we want them to join in and implement the project together with, if necessary, with government and other promoters. So shortly, maybe by next year, we'll launch this project on a PPP basis so that we can cater for the long term. Areas of cooperation include ship repairs and shipbuilding. And on this plan, you can see we have extended the port area. All the area indicated on this plan has been reclaimed in 2016. We have earmarked an area for shipbuilding, which we will again go on an EOI, expression of interest, and we'll implement the project. But most important is something that has been mentioned already. It's about a fishing port. We have earmarked land for the construction of a dedicated fishing port of about which will cater, rather, 120 fishing vessels at any one time. It will be mainly used for parking because we have got, at times, more than 100 vessels in the port. And the consultancy contract for this project has already been, will be awarded maybe by next month. And we intend to complete this project by 2020. So this will be another project, an add-on for not only Port Sorbe, but also for other ports, because fishing vessels move around all the ports in the region. Well, on this note, because of short of time, I've limited myself to only the main project we are implementing. And maybe there will be other areas of cooperation, mainly for training, of capacity building, and maybe I forgot the flow. I think I just need to say thank you. Right.
Thank you very much, Shakil. In your presentation, one thing became, or rather two points became very clear and very important. One is that the difference between the previous way of looking at particular sectors, ports development, tourism development, maritime transport, separately, without looking at an integrated manner in which all these are interlinked, is very important. And this is where, when you're talking about blue economy, ocean economy, and when we are talking about fisheries sector, port sector, maritime transport, separately, this is where the difference is. It's how we look at all the sectors in an integrated manner. So this is the first point that you made. And this is where you demonstrated that we can't look at the development of the port without looking at the fisheries sector, and you mentioned the tourism sector and some other sectors as well. So it means that you have to address the development challenges in a holistic manner. And this would also require us at national level to review the way we have established the public sector itself. As you know, in the public sector, we have the Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of related to the infrastructure, to the ports, Ministry of this and that, and each one of these ministries have the tendency to act as in a silo. And this is one of the challenges we have to address when we're talking about the development of blue economy, ocean economy. Now that's the first point that you became very clear after we presented. The second one, and which is linked to the point of the session, is the regional value addition. Many of the challenges for economic development cannot be addressed by one country alone. You mentioned that. And this is key, and this is what we are trying to look at. You mentioned APOE. Just for those who do not know APOE, it's the Association of Ports of Indian Ocean. So there is an association of all the ports, and they meet regularly. There is a council of the Association of Ports, and my next presenter, who is Colonel Andre Ciseaux, he has been the chair of that platform, but now he is the acting Secretary General of the Ports and Management Authority of the Eastern and Southern Africa, which include also some of the island states ports. So I think in his capacity of both the previous chair of the APOE and the current acting Secretary General, I think he can also demonstrate to us the regional value addition of many of the activities that we can do. And later on, we will have another presentation which will also try to make the same case about the issue of regional value addition and the regional activities. I will add on at some point in time of activities that we undertake. There are several, at least 10 different activities which require countries to collaborate to each other.
In fact, the question, like you rightly pointed out, is the importance of the regional organizations, whether we are playing the role to facilitate the development of the blue economy in our region. We are talking a lot about the blue economy, but we need also to look at the mechanism to move it from a theoretical aspect to the practical aspect so that we can all put our hands together and hold the ground to produce the economic results which we all expect from the Blue Economy Initiative, which even Europe now is talking about it. So it is important to note that within our region, on the continent, islands, we have a number of various regional groupings that maybe some of these groupings, we are the mandate step over the toes of the others. To be able to ensure that we deliver based on the mandates, we need to relook at ourselves as regional organizations to ensure that we identify our strengths, our weaknesses, and where we are stepping on the toes of the others. How we can avoid the duplication of efforts in doing our business. From there, we can identify how we can collaborate, how we can integrate the strategies that we are all developing to achieve the blue economy development of the continent and the objectives and expectations of our people. It is also important to note that funding for regional organizations and associations is running out faster than we can imagine. Many regional organizations are being pressured to relook at the way they do business and ensure that the meager financial resources that is extended to them are used for bigger benefit. So we therefore need to be smart in redefining the way we can collaborate and create values for our members who contribute generously the annual subscription fee to keep these organizations running, and the financial resources from outside our region that comes in to support us to develop programs and initiatives to get things going, to create growth for Africa. We also need to show our members values that we are creating and what impact it will create for them in the creation of growth and efficiency for the continents. The members also need to participate actively in sharing data. We have heard a lot about no sharing of data or limited data in our region, and contribute their ideas and challenges that they are facing in order for the regional communities to put in place mechanisms for improvement. And this is very important because if the regional organization works on an agenda and there's no participation and involvement of the members, we might find ourselves working, producing results that will just go on the shelves. I've seen a number of these examples during my short stay with the PAMESA. But just to recall that at the onset, it was the members who requested such studies to be put in place, such provisions are made to improve the way we do business on the continent. One of the examples that initiative that we are developing at PAMESA level and other associations in the region is a brand called the Cruise Africa. We have noted that during the time we've had maritime security problems in our region, the piracy to be more precise, most of the cruise ships had disappeared from the region. All the super yachts, the pleasure craft industry had disappeared. We had continued to work tirelessly as regional organizations, especially through the APIOI, the Ports Association of the Indian Ocean Islands, to go to trade fairs. At times there were panic that the people there will ask us, what are you talking about? There's pirates there. And we were saying, no, you should go to explain, you should go to explain. We braved the bad weather and we went to all the trade fairs possible to ensure that we continue to market the region in the face of the adversaries. We have seen immediate growth immediately after the piracy had been contained. Therefore, the region is benefiting through the cruise industry. And the same thing are being pushed to develop again along the east coast of Africa, the southern Africa, the southwest Africa, and the western African countries. To be able to be successful with the Cruise Africa initiative, all members need to participate actively. The role of the private sectors will be very important to get this initiative going and to produce the benefits for all countries. This morning we heard the professor talking about the benefit of the lending countries from the coastal countries. The Cruise Africa initiative, for example, makes provision to create spillover and growth for the lending countries. The idea is to cluster the countries together as per sub-region. To give you practical example, if a cruise ship called to Mombasa, for example, Mombasa port, some of the tourists may decide to stay in Mombasa, while some others may decide to go to Uganda, to Rwanda, then catch a flight, go back to board their ship in Dar es Salaam. And the same thing continue down Mozambique, Botswana, all the landing countries get involved. But how can PAMESA achieve that alone if the members are not participating actively? The objective is to create spillover for the land link. The lakes will work, the boats will work, the train will work, the airline will work. Therefore, these are values that we as regional organizations are trying to create. And the same thing for the pleasure craft industry, because we take note that the cruise ship is a seasonal business. And many people will invest to attract the business. But when the season is over, what do we do with our investment? How do we continue to profit? Therefore, there's a need for the African countries, for example, the continent and the other islands, to relook at the way we attract and develop the pleasure craft industry on the coast. They are smaller than the cruise, but they are big spenders. I'm sure when some of these big visitors, they are in the region, the Bill Gates, Abramovich and others, the Khalifas, they would wish to visit also the landing countries. They are big spenders. Therefore, they will complement the cruise industry in parallel. So it is important to say that PAMESA alone or the regional organizations alone cannot achieve that. We definitely need the support of our parent organizations at continental level to give the technical support to the associations and regional groupings to be able to deliver on such important mission. And it's an enormous task that we at regional level may not have all the resources. Therefore, we will tap on the opportunity that Professor is here, Dr. Ngomo is here, to request that we are given the necessary support to be able to achieve such important initiative for the creation of economic growth in Africa. And this is an important integral part of the blue economy development. Therefore, to sum up, Mr. Chairman, it is important that the role of our regional organizations and sub-organizations be relooked at and our capacity be developed further to be able to deliver on our mandate to create growth, economic spillover, and efficiency in the blue economic development of Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Cizo. Before I try to summarize a bit the points that was made, as I said, there is also Mr. David Bianchi, who will make a presentation which he will brush a lot on the same topic. Just to present you, Mr. Bianchi is an economist by profession. He has been working in Seychelles in the field of industrial and business promotion in Seychelles for a number of years. He has been at the Seychelles Port Authority for at least 10 years. So he has a long experience of working in the area of blue economy and more particularly in this particular area, which is ports development, maritime transport improvement, business and industrial promotion. So, Mr. Bianchi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to all. I will be very brief because the three previous speakers have basically said it all on my notes. But what I will do perhaps is lay a little more emphasis on one of the greatest areas of collaborations that we've had in the region. And this involves the maritime insecurity problems that we had a few years back related to the piracy. Seychelles is a small island country, and we depend on the external trade for the bulk of our operations in the country. In fact, over 95% of everything that we consume is imported. So you can imagine the importance of shipping to us. And unfortunately, piracy really dented our ability to sustain ourselves. It is estimated that during the piracy period, our GDP went down by about 5 to 6%, because one, everything became very expensive. A cargo ship, for example, had to make long detours to come to the region because they had to divert away from the security zones. So eventually, everybody suffered. And through the excellent collaborations that we had with all the partners, the regional partners, and also other partners from afar, we managed to contain the situation. We don't think it's over as of now, as of today. We think it's still something that is dormant, and we would implore everybody to sustain that collaboration and perhaps strengthen it so that what happened 6, 7, 8 years ago doesn't repeat itself. The other area that I believe maybe Mr. Chairman perhaps can elaborate a little bit later on is the good example of collaboration in the region under the umbrella of the COI, the Indian Ocean Commission, insofar as the joint patrol of the ocean to protect the ocean resources of Seychelles, Mauritius, Madagascar, and Reunion. So these are the two examples that I believe they are concrete examples where collaborations have been very effective. And as part of the platforms that we use in the Seychelles Ports Authority, I will not go back into talking about APOE and PAMESA, but we also have a number of memorandum of understanding, or what we call sistership agreements, with a lot of ports, including the port of Marseille in France, the port of Antwerp in Belgium, port of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea, Cyprus, Solomon Island in the Pacific, Cape Verde Island in the Atlantic, and St. Martin's in the Caribbean. So we've chosen these ports because we feel we have something to learn from them. And of course, whatever we learn from them, we'll pass it on to you, because through these forums, we are ready to share our knowledge. So I think I'm within my time. I will not repeat what others have said, and I will thank the chairman for giving me this chance to elaborate a little further on the two main issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bianchi. And I'll do so. I'll do what normally it's the chairman who asks the panelists to say things. Now the panelists asking the chairman to elaborate. So I'll do though, which is okay. No, because this theme of the regional value addition is very important. And it has been very well developed by the previous panelists, that what is very important is, of course, the establishment of frameworks whether it is bilateral framework, and it was very well put by Dr. Badal, or a regional framework or international frameworks. So what we gather from the presentations right now is that for the development of the blue economy in this region, it is very important to try to address some very important key challenges. Mr. Bianchi mentioned the issue of maritime security. For me, piracy was a wake-up call. In fact, there are lots and lots of all sorts of maritime crimes which are impacting upon other countries. There is, for example, like drugs problems in our island states. In Mauritius, it's a priority. I know in all the other countries as well. But this problem of drug is a problem because we know the route that the drug producers and the drug dealers undertake. We know from where it comes. And more than 90% or 95% of the drugs come from the maritime zone. There is also the problem of arms trafficking, etc. So we have to address the preconditions first. And the precondition is if, and it is the case, sorry, it's not if, all the countries in this region wants to develop blue economy. So we have to ensure that there is maritime security in this region. And there is lots of work that we are doing here in this region. I won't go into the details of explaining to you. I do have presentations to explain to you what exactly we are doing, but suffice to tell you that we are establishing a maritime surveillance and control mechanism which is being established by all the countries in this region and spearheaded by the Indian Ocean Commission. Not later than on the 29th of April, here in the same conference room, we signed two agreements for exchange of information amongst all the countries and also coordinated actions at sea, which, if effective, and we are working on that, we'll try to address the issue of maritime security. Part of which is another point that was mentioned by Mr. Bianchi, is the surveillance of fisheries activities at sea. So we have to have a snapshot of all the illicit or licit activities that are being undertaken in this region. And we've already secured, not secured rather, we've already agreed that we'll be working in a region which is titled an area of 14 million square kilometers. Much work is being done there. If you go in the IOC website, you'll find there all the details on this one. So just to tell you that these are preconditions which are necessary. Unless we deal with that, we won't be able to address other things. Another challenge, for example, is the fact that we have in this region, we are talking about the Western Indian Ocean region, something like 600 to 700 million tons of oil that are transiting from this region. This is huge amount of petrol, of oil, of hydrocarbons. And this is a big risk. We've been working on that for the last 10 years. But until now, for some reasons, I'm not going to dwell into it, we are not finding a specific solutions. At one point in time, we wanted to establish a maritime corridor for all the tankers that should take. And together with it, we would have put in place equipments and other systems that would try to act if any particular accident happens. It has occurred that in Mauritius, in Seychelles, for example, some boats had some difficulties, and fortunately, it was not it didn't go very well. So there are at least 12 different types of projects which are trying to address the preconditions which are very important for the development of blue economy. Now, having said that, I think it's time for me to present the last panelist, Mr. Norengi. Mr. Norengi, he is the acting director in the Ministry for Fisheries, or rather Ministry of, I would say, Ocean Economy, Fisheries. And he has been working, I understand, for the last 30 years in the area of fisheries management and as a public official in Mauritius. But he has been also involved in many regional activities, including the IOC surveillance of fisheries plan that is operational since the last 10 years, and for which he is the Mauritian representative involved in the system. So, Mr. Rorengi, we will hear from you. Most probably you will be focusing on one most important resource that is shared by most of us, the fisheries sector. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Well, I've been asked to talk on how ocean countries have responded to challenges of the blue economy, including issues of depletion of ocean resources, climate change, the delimitation of maritime boundaries, and what regulatory framework exists on these issues. But before coming to this, I'd like to talk on blue economy in the global context and as well as blue economy in Mauritius. The blue economy could have been the world's 7th largest economy had it been a state. The output of the ocean in the is around 1.3 trillion and is estimated to double by 2030. Around 30 million jobs are linked to the blue economy worldwide. The blue economy is an emerging sector in many coastal states, including the small island states. In Mauritius, the government vision is to make the ocean economy an economic pillar. In this context, a ministry dedicated to blue economy has been created. We have identified some 7 clusters in the blue economy, which are fisheries and aquaculture. We have the Doha deep ocean water application. We have the seaport-related activities, tourism and leisure, maritime renewable energies, seabed exploration, and ocean knowledge. Of these 7, we have the tourism and the fisheries sectors, which are the leading sectors. I'm from the fisheries sector. I'd like to say a few words on the fisheries. The total turnover in the fisheries is around 28 billion rupees, which represent around 890 million USD. Total export of fish and fish products is around 123,000. The figures are from last year, which represents some 14 billion rupees. Domestic export, which include export of canned tuna, tuna lloyd, we have fish meal and fish oil, is around 63,000 tons. Re-export is around 60,000 tons again. Total import of fish and fish products is around 178,000, which represent around 18 billion rupees. Thus, we have a positive balance in the fishery sector. Local production, it amounts to 23,000 tons, around 23,000 tons, and it includes mainly tuna. Tuna itself represents around 18,000 tons. Local, I said about it, we have the contribution of the fisheries sector in terms of export, in terms of national export, it represents some 19%. We have a contribution to GDP of 1.6%. We have around 1,000 vessels calling to Pointe each year. Pointe has been a transshipment base since 1965, and this brings a lot of economy to our income to our country. Some 50,000 tons of fish were transshipped at Pointe last year. We have a capita consumption of 28.6. Direct and indirect job in the fisheries sector is around 22,000. We are third in terms of export to the EU market. We export to the EU, to the US, to the Asian and Middle East markets. Now, coming to the blue economy, opportunities, sorry. Now, opportunities in coastal states, especially the ocean island states. The blue economy has wealth generation and job creation. We have a vast EZ. Most of the states, the island states, they have vast EZ, and we have a lot of untapped resources, and these can be exploited. We have aquaculture, which can be a sustainable option for seafood production. Aquaculture, it accounts for more than 50% of the world's seafood production. In fact, catch from the capture fisheries is stagnating, around 19 million tons. And aquaculture, the recent figure from FAO is some 74 million tons. And it is expected that it will exceed the production from the capture fisheries. Tourism is another largest employer in the blue economy. Sustainable marine energy can play a vital role in the social and economic development. So ocean energy is one of the answers to meeting the growing demand for clean energy. Biotechnology is a challenging and promising industry in the blue ocean economy. We have the port services also is very important in the blue economy. Now we'll come to the challenges. The main challenges in the ocean economy, we have the IUU fishing and the climate change. These are two main. We have also a vast EEZ, and it can be positive, it can be negative also. It is not easy to carry out surveillance when you have a vast EEZ. We have a lack of scientific information on untapped resources. We have lack of financial resources. We lack technical know-how. Sourcing of raw material for processing is a problem. In fact, countries like Mauritius, we are more a processing state than a fishing nation. And it becomes very difficult at times to get raw materials to satisfy the commitment that we have taken. Marine pollution, especially microplastic pollution, is another challenge. Now we'll come to the measures to address these challenges. Now we have several challenges that we have addressed since several years now through regional collaboration and cooperation among coastal states, especially through the Indian Ocean Commission. In fact, we have now a regional VMS. The VMS, Vessel Monitoring System, is a satellite tracking system so that easily you can know the position, direction of vessels, the speed of vessels. We have all the countries, we have our national VMS. Now these national VMS are linked together, and we have a regional VMS for the countries of the COI. And any vessel, any IU vessel coming in our region can be easily traced out. We are also implementing the FAO port state measures. We are signatory to it. All data that we collect on our port relating to fishing vessels are exchanged between the countries. We have a regional observer scheme. We have observers that we place on board vessels. We are coming with an electronic reporting system and electronic monitoring system shortly. At the IOTC, we have all the coastal states. They group together. We have a group there, G16, we call it G16, and we usually take common position at the IOTC, of course, of subject of interest to us. In fact, we had a regional tuna project which dates back to the late 80s, early 90s. This project, it was under the aegis of the COI, and this project, in fact, had laid the foundation for data collection, processing, and analysis. Now we have all the countries of COI, they are in a better position to collect and process tuna data especially. This was a very successful project, and we had, in fact, received capacity building, and we had several capacity building programs, and in fact, the French IRD had helped us a lot. We have also the CIOFA, which is responsible for the management of demersal species, and we all members there. We have the CIOFC, which is established in 2004, and this is responsible for the management of living resources in our EZ. We have a very important project, the Plan Régional de Surveillance des Pêches, of which the chair was talking just now. In fact, this project aims at containing the IU fishing. IU fishing is really a problem, although it has gone slightly down. Some years back, it was estimated there were some 30% of the capture fisheries came from IU fishing. Now, this figure has gone down, it's around 10 to 12% only. Now, this surveillance project involves A&C patrol by inspectors of the countries members of the IUC. And of course, we use our aircraft and our patrol vessels. During the project, in fact, it started in the year 2007. It ended recently in April 2018. And we had carried out during the project some 50 joint mission. And we had involved some 392 inspectors. In number of inspection carried out, sorry, I have missed. Number of contravention established was more than above 70, and some 10 vessels were taken to port for infringements. Other projects of the IUC includes the biodiversity project, and this aim at national, regional, institutional capacities building. We had several projects under this biodiversity project. We had the National Coral Reef Network. Now, each country, they had to set up their own National Coral Reef Network. Under this National Coral Reef Network, each state, they had to monitor the coral reef. They had to carry out coral farming, mangrove plantation, and regular ecological surveys to assess the status of the coral reef. We had also a collaborative project with Réunion Island, Kilonia Réunion Island, and this aimed at capacity building in the conservation of marine turtles and seagrass also. We had another project for assessing seagrass restoration. In fact, we carried out an assessment of our seagrass. Presently, we're involved in the restoration of seagrass. We have another important project, COI Network MPA project. Now, this provided a forum for MPA managers of the countries of the COI to discuss and share experience. We had also a capacity building component, and it also helped us to carry out inventory of our MPAs and help us to set up our management plan and, of course, bring some reinforcement of our MPAs. We have another project. It involves mainly the fishermen community, Fédération des Artisanal Fishermen of the Indian Ocean States. Now, this forum, this federation, it is a platform whereby the fishermen can share the experience, share the fishing techniques, and also involve in decision-making processes affecting the fisheries management. They have benefited from the Smart Fish program, and it was funded by the European Union. Now we'll come to some regional perspective to address climate change. which is a very serious problem globally, not only regionally, but also globally. Climate change, as I said, it's not only a national problem, it's also a regional and global problem. Impacts of climate change should be addressed using a three-pronged approach, namely national, regional, and international in respect of mitigating impacts. There is a need for capacity building and joint research. Projects such as marine pollution, conservation, and protection of marine biodiversity and ecosystems should be addressed regionally. Donor institutions should be called to provide financial assistance. There is a need to look for funds to address the impact of climate change. There should be recourse to climate change resistant materials, decreased use of CFCs, biodegradable plastics in seeds. The restoration of mangrove ecosystem and seagrass is a cost-effective way to help ensure food security for many coastal communities. Coral farming should be carried out to restore the coral reef. National fleet should be set up among the coastal states. This is very important in taking into account that we are soon coming with a quota at the IOTC. We should have our own fleet because we often get problems relating to procurement of raw materials. NPO IUU should be set up by all the states. Port state measures should be established in line with FAO port state measures. Resolution of regional fishery management organization to which we are parties should be applied strictly. Legislation should be reinforced. In Mauritius, the current national legislation provides for provisions with international convention and obligations. We have UNCLOS here, which has legal basis. Presently, our legislation is being reviewed to take on board our new obligation and provisions of our international instrument to which we have adhered. We have several regulations under this, our main act, which include banning of removal of corals, like closed seasons. We have banning of removal of sand. We have closed season for our lagoon fishery, for octopus. We have regulation on fat fishery, etc. No. Oh, I think I missed one. We have also the one more element that I like to just elaborate on it, the fishing agreement. You know, this is a very important because we have very often problem to procure raw materials, and this could be achieved. If we have fishing agreement between the coastal state, like we have one with Seychelles. It dates back to 1990. It was just renewed last year, and it provides for fishing opportunities for 20 longliners, 15 personers, and 5 supply vessels from Seychelles to fish in our waters, and the similar number of vessels to operate in Seychelles waters, Mauritian vessels to operate in Seychelles waters. Such initiatives, I think, should be encouraged because this may solve, to a large extent, our problem relating to procurement of raw materials. With this, I thank you for your attention.
Mr. Narangi, thank you very much. Just to thanks very much for the very detailed presentation. I think it provided an idea of what are the things that we can do at regional level together with other countries. Just to mention also that the projects that have been mentioned by Mr. Orangi are not comprehensive. There are quite a number of many other initiatives and projects that are implemented by the Indonesian Commission. And here I would like to mention one. I don't know whether in this conference it has been mentioned, but UNECA has been initiating the establishment of a regional center for a regional center of excellence on blue economy. And this is something on which we are working, and we are exchanging with UNECA and seeing how we can move on that one. That would be one of the very important, I think, instrument to be established that would help to address the question 4 of the session, which is on the agenda here. Now, having said that, it is 4:10 right now, and we are 40 minutes ahead of our scheduled time we were supposed to finish. We were supposed to finish at 3:30. It's 4:10. I wanted to summarize a bit on the whole picture, but I'll do it very, very quickly. The subject matter for this session was how collaboration with amongst the countries can contribute to the development of blue economy, to the inclusive industrialization and economic development. And I think the demonstration by the panelists have showed that yes, indeed, the regional cooperation and cooperation among neighboring countries cannot be ignored at all, because we share the same ocean and we share the same resources here. I won't go into the detailed specifics of what we can conclude on this, but I just need your guidance on how we would proceed, because normally we should have some exchanges with the floor. I'm sure you have questions for each of the panelists and even the chair if you want to. So I would suggest, if you agree, that we take some 10-15 minutes to have some questions and answers. And I don't know whether, yeah, please.
If you can allow, we can take some 20 minutes for the general discussions, because after that we are going to have the high-level meeting with the ministers. We give you 20 minutes for overall discussion.
How long?
20
minutes?
Yeah.
I was suggesting just 10 minutes or even less. But anyway, what I suggest is that those who are in great need for some coffee or tea can just get out and then take some coffee and come back. I'm sure tea and coffee is ready. I would suggest that we take some time to have some questions and answers. So the floor is open. Who would like to shoot? Zimbabwe first. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is brief, and it has to do with cooperation by coastal member states in the region, but in a specific area. The panelists have spoken about cooperation in various areas, including those of security. But one area which I think is quite critical has to do with disaster risk management. I just wanted to find out highlights of cooperation, because sometimes these states are affected by cyclones and so forth. I just wanted to find out what is the amount of cooperation, what is the involvement of the private sector, if any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether I would leave it for the panelists or even I myself, I can answer to that question. Just to say that there is indeed lots of cooperation in the area of disaster risk management. We have had at least 5 projects in the last 15 years by the IOC initiated in this particular area. And this is why I mentioned earlier that one area of disaster risk management, which is related to the risks from the transportation of petrol, oil in this region, is the biggest one. With respect to the cyclones and climate change, I can assure you that we have had several projects. Of course, these are projects for the IOC countries only, but we will be very open and happy to look at other projects. There are projects, for example, like the global monitoring of environment for sustainable development that has been proposed and implemented by the African Union for the whole of Africa, including the island states. There is the African monitoring of environment project, which has been implemented already, which was finished a few years back. So there are lots of projects in this particular area. What I think is important for the time being is to try to address, there is what we call the climate fund. And for the island states, we have already formulated projects amounting to more than 100 million euros, and which have been tabled already to the climate fund. Now, this is for the IOC countries only, but I would suggest that the coastal countries can also join in and try to see how we can cooperate together. And I don't know whether the panelists would like to add to what I've already, Mr. Badal, please.
Yeah. Well, with regards to Mauritius and Seychelles, I mean, for the joint management area, we're actually trying to devise a way to look for assistance for disaster management, especially in contingency planning. So these will involve new technologies being involved, like platforms, and also how we look into those areas. Thank you. To add.
Other questions, please? I'm trying to go around. If there are no questions, then I would like to here maybe stop, and maybe you can have your tea, coffee break. I presume that in 15 minutes you're starting the next session. So maybe you can have a 10 minutes break before coming down. I remain to be corrected by the organizers. The conference chairperson. Do we stop? Okay, if there are no further questions, I'd like to stop here. I would like to thank all the panelists. Thanks very much for your presentations, and to all of you and the organizers. So thanks very much, and I understand we are back in 10 minutes, right? 12 minutes. Yeah?
Would you like to continue thereafter? After tea? No, after tea? Tea break.
We finished.
You
so
finished.
you can have your tea
okay,
break,
then, thank you.
and then come back in 10 minutes.
They have to come back at 5:15, yeah. 5:15, because at 5:30 we'll start the roundtable ministerial meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I